Hello everyone, welcome to the Millennium Cohort Study introductory webinar. I'm the CLS Communications Officer Ryan Bradshaw, and before I hand over to the presenters, I just have a few bits of housekeeping. First of all, we're going to actually turn off the your microphones today, just to make it a bit easier to moderate. If you do have any questions, if you could just put them into the chat pane in the bottom left-hand corner. At the end of every presentation, the presenters will be able to answer your questions there. If you do have any problems hearing us during the presentation, just also just put it into the chat pane. So I'm just going to hand you over now to the introduction, and that's Pravitha Patalay.
Hello, my name is Pravitha. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Centre for Longitudinal Studies and work primarily with the Millennium Cohort Study. Today I'm just going to give a broad introduction to the study, and after that Kate will come on to the webinar and give much more in-depth detail about the types of questions we've asked at the various sweeps, with the slight focus on sweeps 5 and 6, which are the most recent ones. And then after that, Tarek will talk about the survey design for the MCS, which is a slightly complex survey design, and talk about weights. And after each session, we'll have a short question time. But then at the end, after listening to all the speakers, there'll be opportunity to ask broader questions that you might have that are still not answered by the end of the presentations. So the British birth cohort studies, so Britain has a long tradition of birth cohort studies, and the Millennium Cohort Study is the first one for 30 years. And the previous ones were the 1946 MRC National Survey of Health and Development, the 1958 cohort, which is the National Child Development Study, and the 1970 study, which is the British birth cohort study. And 3 of the 4 studies, the 1958, 1970, and the MCS, are based here at Centre for Longitudinal Studies. The UK Millennium Cohort Study was a birth cohort study that started at the start of the millennium in 2001-2002, with 19,000 children born in 400 areas of the UK. It's a highly multidisciplinary survey, and when Kate goes through the content, you'll see the range of questions and domains that we have collected data on, and is designed to capture the influence of early family context on child development and outcomes through childhood into adolescence, and hopefully will have funding to carry on through adulthood. So the objectives of the MCS were to chart the initial conditions of the social, economic and health advantages and disadvantages facing children in the new century and their consequences, to be able to capture information for future generations, to learn things about this generation which will help inform future policy, and to compare patterns of development with the older cohorts to see whether there's been change in trends of certain things over the last few decades, to collect information on previously neglected topics such as father's involvement and childcare, which the previous cohorts haven't or did not include much data on, and to investigate the wider social ecology of the family, including community and services. So we've collected data not only on family, but we have data, for example, schools, and as I go through, you'll see we also have linked data to education and hopefully health and other administrative records. So to just say, the study is funded primarily by the ESRC, which is the Economic and Social Research Council, but there's co-funding by a range of different UK government departments and research councils. So in terms of geographical spread, the study covers all 4 countries within the United Kingdom, and is actually the first birth cohort study to do so. And because of this, it's a major data resource, because it allows us to think about things like prevalence and UK-wide estimates for different outcomes, and also make country comparisons. The cohort were born over a 12-month period. In England and Wales, that is between September 2000 and August 2001. In Scotland and Northern Ireland, that is November 2000 and January 2002. It's geographically clustered by electoral ward, and when Tarek talks about the survey design and this kind of weights to use, you'll kind of see more detail about the way the sampling was done. And it oversamples for certain groups. It oversamples for children in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it oversamples for areas with high child poverty, and within England it oversamples for areas with higher ethnic minority populations. So far we have sweep 6 is in the field, so we have data already deposited for 5 sweeps. The first survey was done at age 9 months, so around 2001-2002. Then there's the age 3 survey, which was done 2003-2004, an age 5 survey in 2006, an age 7 survey that was 2008-2009, an age 11 survey in 2012, so children were aged 11 and in their final year of primary school. And these data were deposited last year in autumn. So now, presently, sweep 6 is at age 14, 15 is in the field, and these data will be expected next autumn. So data collection is expected to go on until kind of spring 2016 and deposited by the end of 2016. And recently the consultation for sweep 7 has begun, which will be an age 17 sweep starting in 2018. And just to kind of at this point say, if after having listened to the content today, and if you're already familiar use of the data set, if you have suggestions for things to include, there's a consultation going on at the moment that you can take part in for the content for age 17. So the idea is then there will be following sweeps after this as well, but we don't know exactly what ages and which years those will be in. So now going to participation, we started off with 18,000 plus young children at the first sweep, but as you will see from this graph, participation has been decreasing over time, and the last 2 sweeps we had just under 14,000 participants. And this is not kind of uncommon for a longitudinal birth cohort study. And when Tarek talks about the weights, you'll see that they have, he'll present data on whether attrition has been kind of biased in certain ways, and also the kind of weights that are included in the data sets that allow it to kind of control for attrition bias in analysis. So it's just breaking down the previous graph into kind of the table, so you can see what sample was achieved for the 4 different countries in the UK, and then the total sample achieved in the bottom row. As you can, so we had 18,500 at MCS1, and the latest sweep we had 13,000, almost 13,300. And I think the important thing to note here is people, once they don't participate in a particular sweep, that doesn't mean they necessarily left the study for the sweeps afterwards. So there are cases, quite a few, where people participate for example, participate in sweep 2 and sweep 4 and skip sweep 3. So people go in and out of the study. Just to kind of talk about the engagement with the participants themselves, so to try and keep engagement and ensure participation, there's a lot of activity that goes on at the Centre for Longitudinal Studies to kind of engage with participants, and they also get kind of leaflets like the ones you can see on these slides that just tells them a kind of summary or a distillation of some key findings from every sweep. And this has been received quite positively, but I just wanted to kind of mention it in terms of all the types of activities that also happen to engage participants and to ensure participation. So data linkage. So to try and maximize the information we can get from the data, there's always been a kind of push to link these data with administrative records. And this table kind of just gives an overview of the kinds of data linkages that have been done and are going on at the moment. So for example, mother's maternity records are linked to the data, and this was done quite early on. Parents' economic records in progress, so there's permission from parents to link to their economic records. Cohort members' health records, consent has been sought to link cohort members' health records until age 14, and at the age 17 survey the plan is to ask cohort members again for their own consent, because this was also parent consent, to link their health again from age 17 onwards. The right-hand side column where it says status kind of gives you an update on where we are with these linkages. So for example, in Wales, this one, in terms of health, the data are almost ready and they're expected to be available end of 2015, early 2016. Scotland, approvals are in place, but the linked data should be available early to mid 2016. And in England, it's currently being assessed and will hopefully be available late 2016. In terms of educational records, for example, like the National Pupil Database in England, it's already been linked quite successfully. So, for example, in England's Key Stage 2 scores are linked to participant records, and similarly, so in Scotland and Wales, the equivalent data sets are linked to the educational kind of administrative data sets are linked to the data set. And these can be accessed through UPDS, but there's it's much more secure access, so there's secure data commissions and things that are needed to access these data. So now moving on to access. So the data are available for, for people to use, and the UK Data Archive is where the data are kept. And all you need to do, kind of in brief, is if you create an account, state the purpose of your project. So you kind of just have to give a brief description, a few lines saying why you want to access the data set you might want to access. You find the data set of interest, and you agree to security and other policies that apply to each of these data sets, and then you can download the data and related supporting documents. For MCS, the data are available in either SPSS files or Stata files, and I guess from either of these it's quite easy to convert them into whichever other programs you might use for analysis. So in terms of the data files available, I think the kind of key thing to know about is that data are available separately by sweep. So you don't get one file that has all the sweeps kind of appended to each other, and it's not just kind of one giant data set. So essentially you get each sweep as a cross-sectional data set. So you get all the kind of questions and the sample that were in that sweep. And even within each sweep, there are multiple files that are available. So all of the different kind of surveys and the different data that are collected are not in the same data file. So on the left side, I just took a snapshot of the different data files that come with MCS Sweep 5. As you can see, it's quite a long list. And so, for example, you have the household grids, and you have the parent completed measures, you have the child self-completed measures, you have the assessments, and there's also a teacher survey, which was almost half the sample has a teacher survey. So just to kind of be mindful that each of these is a separate data file. And in the guide, there's lots of guidance documents on what is where and how to merge these files and all of that. So there's lots and lots of documentation on pretty much every aspect of the study. So the data and documentation can be found at UKDA, but there's also documentation available on the CLS website, where you can see the surveys that, if you're interested in what questions might have been asked, you can download that for every wave. If you're interested in the child survey, you can download that, or the parent. There's also guides to initial findings. So at every sweep, there's kind of initial finding document that is published from kind of the initial analysis from the data. And the last thing is all known publications based on this cohort, and I have to stress all known publications, so the ones that we find and or we're told about, are searchable in an online database on the CLS website as well. So if you just go to the bibliography and say study MCS, you will find the almost 600 papers that have been so far published using Millennium Cohort Study data. And I think that's the end of my presentation. And if you have any questions regarding what I've just said, please, if you can type them up, then I can try and answer them. I should probably say if they're to do with content specifically, I would wait until Kate is presented because she'll probably cover it. Any questions? Yes, please. So the question is, if you publish a paper using the Millennium Cohort Study data, is it good to let us know? Yes, because then it goes into the bibliography. We know about it, it's nice, but then everybody else can find it as well. I mean, it will be there on PubMed and Google Scholar and all of that, but it's still nice to kind of, for us to keep track of the papers that are published using the data. So yes, please. So this question is about restrictions on use by overseas researchers. I'm not entirely certain, but if you refer to UK Data Archive, because different data sets have slightly different kind of access criteria associated with them, it will be quite clear on their website about what criteria you'd have to meet.
We can also try to find out any further information, and we can share it next week when we send around the recording of the presentation. So we'll send around an email next week.
But also just to stress, lots of international researchers have used the data, so it has been done. But refer to the UK Data Archive, and if it's not clear, we're happy to kind of look into it and clarify what the status is as well. But it has been used, so I think. What happens if someone moves to different? Okay, if you move to a different part of the country, we still try to kind of follow up, so we are informed, or we try to keep track of where people are moving to. If a participant's family moves outside the country, and that is when the kind of data is not collected from them anymore. But within the UK, if they move to different parts of the country, and as long as we can try and kind of, we know that they've moved and we can track them, they're still included in the study. So the question is about when the data is linked, will it be available via the UKD as well? And the answer to that is yes, but they're usually for linked data or some other kind of secure data. They're more kind of the special permissions and more security and secure access kind of restrictions that apply. So it would depend on the specifically linked data, but it will still kind of broadly be within the UKD umbrella, so it won't be available especially outside that. Oh, this question is, are there any sessions for data linkage? I am not entirely certain how to interpret the question, but in terms of if there are sessions on the linked data within MCS, not today, and if they're in future, if you're on the mailing list, you will hear about them. Just generally, if there are sessions on data linkage, I'm not sure. If you could clarify that question, I can try and be more helpful. Okay. Okay, the questions seem to have stopped, so I will hand over to Kate now. And, okay.
Hello, my name is Kate Smith and I'm a survey manager for the UK Millennium Cohort Study. And I'm going to talk a bit about, give you a sort of broad overview of what's included in the MCS surveys, but sort of focusing on what's new at the age 11 and the age 14 SWIPs, which are the most recent completed and the one that's in the field at the moment. So the MCS surveys all include information from a variety of sources. They're very much multidisciplinary, and we also get information from a variety of household members as well. But traditionally, they've always included face-to-face interviews and self-completions with both resident parents, and all the interviews are done using computer-assisted interviews, including the self-completion. The main parent interview is usually done with the mother and has traditionally lasted around about an hour, but it depends very much on the content and the age stage that the cohort member themselves are at. And partner interviews, which are with whichever resident partner of the main parent is resident in the household, which is usually the father in most cases, has lasted around about half an hour. And just to say, we do get very good response rates from resident parent, fathers, partners. It's usually around about between sort of 85 to 90% of eligible partners. So as you can see from the slide that's on the screen at the moment, not only do we include parental interviews, but we have been actually involving the cohort members themselves from a very young age. From the age of 3, we've carried out cognitive assessments and physical measurements with the cohort members themselves, and they've been completing their own questionnaires since the age of 7 as well. At various stages, we've also included other household members at age 3 and 5 with additional funding from the Children's Fund. We were able to include some questions about older siblings and also 2 selected older siblings in the household as well. And since we've been carrying out cognitive assessments, we've also conducted some asked the interviewer themselves to complete some observations, which have normally been around about the circumstances that the cognitive assessment has taken place. At various stages as well, we've included teacher surveys. At age 5, this was done by linking to the to the foundation stage profile in England, that we sent postal questionnaires to class teachers in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. And we carried out a full postal survey of class teachers at age 7, and then at age 11 we repeated this for England and Wales only. And as Pravitha has been talking about, we have had consents to various data linkages over various surveys as well. At age 3, we carried out a saliva sample, which was not for DNA, but was a swab that was taken from the inside of the cheek of the cohort member to test the hygiene hypothesis, to look at exposure to natural immunities to exposures to common childhood illnesses. And we're actually carrying out a saliva sample at age 14, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And also we have included such innovations as well as time use records and activity monitors to look at activity that the cohort member is taking part in. So as I've said, turning now to some of the features that the cohort members themselves have taken part in. As I've said, we've been carrying out cognitive assessments with the cohort members themselves since they were 3. And these assessments have changed obviously over time as the children have grown. But generally they've looked at such elements as their development in language, maths, reading and some non-verbal skills as well. And turning to the most recent surveys, at age 11, we conducted the British Ability Scales verbal similarities, and also two assessments from the Cambridge Cognition assessments, the Spatial Working Memory and the Cambridge Gambling Task. And at age 14, we're repeating one of those and have also added a word activity as well. So turning to the actual age 11 assessments that we did, as I said, it was the BAS verbal similarities and 2 Cambridge cognition assessments, which memory tasks, which are officially named as the spatial working memory task, which obviously we didn't use with the families themselves, and the decision-making task, officially named the Cambridge gambling task. We didn't really feel that using the term gambling was necessarily that wise. So for the BAS verbal similarities, the children were asked to respond to a group of 3 words and to say how they were linked. So in this case, the interviewer would read out book, telephone, newspaper, what are all these things, or how do they go together, and then had to code the responses of the cohort member based on whether they could link those elements and give the correct responses. And this was a test of their verbal skills. For the memory task, which looks at spatial working memory, this was a touch screen assessment which required the child to identify which box on the screen had a blue token underneath it, and then remember not to return to that box again. And this is a very simple stage of the assessment which is being shown at the moment, but the assessment became increasingly hard with up to 8 or 12 actually boxes on the screen. The decision-making task, the child again was touchscreen, and the child was asked to decide whether a token was hidden under a blue or red box, and then decide how many points they wanted to gamble or risk on their decision. And it's an assessment that looks at their innate risk-taking. So as I said before, since the age of 3, we've been carrying out taking physical measurements and some biological samples from the cohort members themselves. And these have included very simply taking their height and weight so that body mass index can be measured. And then at age 5 and 7, we added to this by including waist circumference to look at central fat distribution. And age 7 as well, from age 7 we've added to this by using body fat scales, which send a weak electrical current around the body from one foot to the other to calculate the body fat percentage. And these are normal looking scales which take the child's weight and also then their body fat as well. And we've repeated that at age 11 and at age 14 as well. In addition, at age 7 and at the most recent sweep, we've collected permission for the cohort member to wear a portable activity monitor. In the case of the age 7, this was for a 7-day period after the interview visit to measure the child's level of physical activity. At age 14, this is just for 2 days. And also, as I said, we collected a saliva sample to test a hygiene hypothesis at age 3, and at age 14 we are taking a saliva sample for DNA extraction. And in addition, at age 7, we asked permission from the cohort members' parents to send us back shed milk teeth that the cohort member was beginning to lose in order to for a study to look at the levels of lead that are resident in milk teeth. So at age, as the cohort members have been completing their own questionnaires since they were 7, but at age 11 this was a far greater element. It was a 28-page paper self-completion, because we also want, obviously, as the children are growing up, we want to focus the study much more onto them and to get their views on their life as well. The age 11 self-completion included questions on family and friends and other children as well, in which we included experiences of them being bullied and also perpetrating bullying. We also asked a lot of questions about the things that they did at school, how they found school, and activities that they took part in outside of school, including computer and internet use. We asked them some questions about the area they lived in, how they felt about it, and then we asked them quite a lot of questions about things that they may have done, which included some questions on some elements of antisocial behaviour, and things that they may have started trying, including alcohol and smoking. And we also asked them a lot of questions about how they felt, which included self-esteem, some questions on their mental health, and also about how they saw themselves growing up, including some of their attitudes to growing up, what they would like to be, and what they would like to have achieved by the time they were 30. This is an example of what the self-completion booklet looked like at age 11. It was very carefully designed so that there was virtually no routing, and the grids and question types were presented consistently to the cohort members in order to really safeguard data quality. And for children who had literacy issues, it was also available as an audio version via an MP4 player. But I have to say that the take-up for this for the audio version was incredibly small, even amongst cohort members where we had identified that there were potentially have literacy issues. It was actually most of the cohort members decided that they would like to take it as a paper self-completion. So at age 11, we formalised the consent process for children for the first time, and parents were asked for their own written consent, but to approach the child, who was asked to give their own permission, verbal permission, to take part in all of the child elements. And those verbal consent that we got from the cohort members themselves was to take part in their cognitive assessments, the physical measurements, to complete their own questionnaire, and also we also got permission from the cohort child themselves to approach their class teacher for the teacher survey. So the teacher survey that we included at age 11, as I said before, in this case it was only took part in England and Wales, and this was purely down to funding decisions. Scotland and Northern Ireland did not decide to fund this element. But it was a postal self-completion questionnaire in which we asked the class teacher to answer some questions about the study child's abilities, which was their in relation to the average age 11 child, including attainment in speaking, listening, reading, writing, maths and physical education. And teachers in Wales were asked additional questions about the child's abilities in Welsh language. They were also asked questions about the study child's behaviour over the last 6 months and any concerns that they had over the child's emotion, concentration, behaviour and social ability. There was a section on the study child's profile which included questions on any special needs or support that the child received as well. Excuse me. We asked some questions from the teacher about the study child's parents in terms of their attitude towards their child's education and potential. And we included some questions also about the class that the study child was learning in terms of types of groupings between and within classes, like for instance streaming and setting and within class ability grouping, and some questions on the level of the study of the cohort members' ability in relation to the groupings. And then we finished up with some general questions about the teacher and the characteristics of the teacher and the child's class, including peer groups and the teaching environment. And then finishing up obviously specific to age 11, which was how ready the teacher felt that the child was to move on to secondary school. So turning now to the age 14 survey, which is the survey that's in the field at the moment. It's the most ambitious survey that we've put together to date, and it is very complex, the most complex survey as well. So once again, we're conducting interviews and self-completion with the parents, a main parent and the partner parent. And once again, no young person is getting a questionnaire, but it is even longer this time. It's around about 45 minutes. And that's because they're at an age now where they can answer so many more questions about their own experiences. And we've moved some questions that we've previously asked to the parents. We're asking the young person themselves this time. Once again, we are asking the young person to carry out the cognitive assessments, and this time it's a word activity and also repeating the decision-making task from the Cambridge Cognition Battery. But for the first time ever, we are actually asking the parents themselves to complete some cognitive assessments, and they are also carrying out the word activity. It's a list of 20 words, item word activity, to look at the knowledge of vocab. But we're giving separate lists of 20 words to the main parent, the partner parent, and the young person, so that they don't get a chance to see each other's. This is possibly the very last time that we will be asking the parents themselves to take part. At age 17 at the moment, the plan is just to approach the cohort member themselves. So we felt that this was the last chance that we had in order to possibly look at carrying out a cognitive assessment with the parents. As I've already shown, we're carrying out the 3 physical measurements of the young person at age 14 of height, weight and body fat percentage as well. And we are also for the first time collecting saliva samples for DNA extraction from both the young person themselves and also from biological parents who are resident in the household, the name and the partner, where they give their permission. And in addition, we're asking the young person to wear an activity monitor for 2 days after the home visit, and also on those same days to carry out to complete a time use diary. And this will be one randomly selected 1 weekday and 1 weekend day. So we're really supplementing the data that we're collecting at age 14. Turning now to the young person questionnaire, as I've said, it's about 45 minutes long and is carried out on a tablet computer, which the young person is in fact encouraged to take away to their room to complete on their own. As we are asking them a wide range of topics at age 14, which include, naturally, we're including some more sensitive areas. And so we're asking an awful lot of questions about what they do in their activities, their views and their values, a lot of questions about their feelings about school and the future, including questions on whether they think they may go to university and how they feel, whether they'll stay on in education. We're also asking questions about how they see their identity in terms of their religious identity, their ethnic identity, and also a lot of questions about their friends, family and relationships, which includes more sensitive questions on romantic relationships and also sexual experiences. There's a lot of questions about things that they may have done or experienced, including antisocial activities, wrongdoing, some criminal activity questions, contact with the police, harassment and bullying, both as a victim and a perpetrator, and also some risky activities that they may be embarking on in terms of smoking, drinking, illegal drugs and gambling as well. We're asking them questions about puberty and diet, and also some more questions about their health and feelings, including their mental health, their self-esteem and their well-being, and also some questions about their personality as well. When we were embarking on thinking about the age 14 survey, we also wanted to redesign it as a survey for teenagers. And we carried out a recontact exercise, which was aimed very much at the young people themselves before we embarked on the age 14 survey earlier this year. And we sent out a participant pack, which was sent to the young people themselves, a letter including a pop-out membership card to sort of enhance their feelings being members of the Child of the New Century study, which is how the Millennium Cohort is branded to the families and to the cohort members themselves. And we sent them a booklet, as an example of which Pravisa showed you earlier, which provided information about the study and the impact and how findings have been used. Because when we did some focus groups with the young people themselves, we found that the cohort members really wanted to know how their data was being used and what use it had been put to. And also what happens to the data once it's collected as well. And we also sent them some swag, some gifts of a keyring, a travel card holder and a notebook, which were very well received by them. We redesigned the website as well, which to be much more young people focused, and you can actually if you want to, have a look at that website, which is found off the CLS website itself. And we're starting to use social media in order to keep in contact with the young people themselves using Facebook and Twitter. And we also rebranded all of the materials to appeal to teenagers. And this is an example of the leaflet that we're using for the Age 14 survey, which is focused on the young people, the cohort members themselves, in the new branding in order to appeal to them and to give them essential information about what we want them to do at age 14. So in addition to all the rich data that we've collected from the families themselves, there have also been some add-on surveys, add-on projects as well over time. And these included, after the very first survey at 9 months, there was a postal survey of mothers who had had assisted fertility in order to treatment for the birth of their cohort member child. And this was done in collaboration with the National Perinatal Epidemiology Unit at Oxford University. And after the Age 3 survey, we also carried out a nursery observation study in collaboration with the Department of Education at Oxford University, which involved a subsample of MCS children whose parents had given their permission in 301 daycare settings, preschools and nursery schools in England have been looked at. And this involves direct observation of the quality of care in those child care settings and the number and qualifications of the staff. At age 7, we included 2 new add-on projects, which was the Every Tooth Tells a Story, which was done in conjunction with the Institute of Child Health, and that was the collection of shed milk teeth from the cohort members to look at exposure to lead. And also there was a non-response project, which looked at ways to maximise response to the study. Okay, well that's the end of my presentation. I'm very happy to take questions.
Thanks, Kate. I'm just going to share the questions on the whiteboard so Kate can see them easier.
The first question is that there isn't genetic analysis of saliva samples. As I said, we at age 14 we are collecting saliva samples with the intention of extracting them for DNA sampling. I'm afraid there's a question of how many teeth were collected in total and how could we access the data. I think there is some information on the CLS website about the teeth, and I think a report has been written, but I'm afraid I don't know the answer to how many teeth were collected in total. There might be something that we need to come back to. There's a question that says, is the information sheet available as an example to researchers? I'm afraid I'm not sure what that means. Maybe the person, Erica Bocolis, could clarify what she means by that. Says, how do the researchers ask for academic achievement from teachers, schools? If you want to see the questions, the actual questionnaires, the teacher questionnaires, are available on the CLS website, so you can see that the questions that were asked, and the teacher data is included as Pravitha showed you. The teacher data sets are included as part of the data resources as well. As I said, the saliva sample, there's a question saying what did you measure with saliva? As I said, the saliva samples that were extracted at age 3 were to test the hygiene hypothesis of exposure to common childhood infections. At the moment, the saliva sample that's being extracted for DNA purposes is going to be banked with the intention that in the future researchers can apply to conduct analysis. There seems to be a comment here saying someone is very interested in the survey of parents' cognitive assessment and what it reveals in terms of the cognitive ability of the young person. Yes, I think this will be a great addition to the data set. Right. There's a question of whether the data is available for research purposes at the school level. I'm going to refer this to Pravitha.
So there is kind of information on which school they attend, but you have to, because it's not a school-based sample, there are not necessarily many students from every school, if that makes sense. So there will be some cases where there would have been multiple cohort members in the same school, but every student in a school is not in the data set, if that makes sense. So you can look at school level variation and school level factors, but it's not necessarily the best data set if you're interested in school factors purely and you want the whole classroom to be there. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's the way the data are at the moment.
Says, what questions or scales are used to assess well-being? We are about to make the questionnaires for the age 14 survey available, but if you want to contact us, we can send you a draft version of the questionnaires. There's a question that says, when a case is considered a dropped out, how many instruments, parent survey, young person, sorry, it's disappeared from the screen, do they need to have answered to be considered part of the sample? It tends to change at every survey, but they have to have taken, to be included as a partial, they need to have included at least one element of the survey. Sorry. And there's a question on the cognitive assessment. Are cognitive tests in the MCS comparable with the other cohort studies? In the MCS, the only test that resembles the BCS and NCDS one is the verbal similarities. Why? Sorry, why are cognitive? Sorry, the question has dropped off the screen. Oh, right. I'm afraid is the score in verbal similarities a good predictor of general ability? I'm afraid I can't answer that question. It may be one that we need to come back to. There's two questions. How does the survey deal with the situation where a child's parents die or the child is moved into foster care? We follow the young person, we follow the cohort member. So wherever the cohort member is resident at the time of the survey is where we survey them, and whoever they are living with in terms of the responsible adults are treated as the main and the parents. And secondly, does the self-complete survey ask any questions about positive activities such as volunteering? There are questions about a variety of activities, and I'm not sure. I don't think volunteering is included. But as I say, if you would like to see the age 14 survey questions, we can make them available for you. There's a question about the nursery observations, what measures were used. This was a sub-study, and I think there is a report on the nursery observations on the CLS website, so you'll be able to find that information in there. And there's a question, is there information on parental child involvement in the community? No, that's not questions that we've covered in MCS to date. Okay. Sorry, there's a question, when will the survey data of parents' cognitive assessment be released? Well, the results from the parents' cognitive assessment will be released with the age 14 survey data, which should be at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. Oh, end of next year, sorry. I'm so sorry, we're in the end of 2016, beginning of 2017. There's a question about what percentage of respondents provided consent for admin data linkage generally. Yes.
So actually it depends on which domain. So in education it's about 95%, so 90 to 95%. For economic records it's about 70%, a little bit more. So it really depends on the domain. Yes, there are selectivity issues, and the likelihood of consenting to admin data linkage is related to things like social class, the gender of the cohort member, and some personality traits of the parents, like being private or being, more concerned about data confidentiality and so on.
There's a question how we use social media to engage with participants, and how did you ensure confidentiality when using these channels? Well, we've used closed groups, and they are moderated by the communications team here at CLS, and very strict levels of privacy in order to keep the cohort members' identities not public. There's a question about linking the MCS with MPD, the National Pupil Database in England, whether the analysis needs to be carried out at CLS by external researchers.
No, but you might have a special access license to have the data, but you don't have to be at CLS to use it.
Okay, that seems to be the end of the questions. Thank you very much. I shall now pass on to Tariq.
Hello everyone, I am Tariq Mustafa. I'm a researcher in quantitative methodology at the Center for Longitudinal Studies, and my presentation today will focus on the MCS sample and the sample design, and on attrition in MCS over time. So we'll see what happens to this sample and what we can do about attrition. I will also say a couple of things about the data structure and how to merge the data sets. So as you know, the Millennium Cohort Study followed the lives of more than 19,000 children born in the 4 countries of the UK, and it provides information on these children, on their parents, and on their broader socioeconomic context. In MCS we have oversampled minorities and disadvantaged groups, so it's very useful for substantive research that's focusing on these 2 groups. All children in MCS were born within a period of 12 months, so they are of similar age, and all children born in this period were eligible to be part of MCS. So the exact definition of the MCS population is the following. It's all children born between 1st of September 2000 and 31st of August 2001 for England and Wales, and between 23rd of November 2011 of January 2002 for Scotland and Northern Ireland. All children were living at the age of 9 months and were eligible to receive child benefits at this age. At this time, child benefit was a universal benefit, and the records, the administrative records, were used to identify the children eligible to be included in the MCS sample. The population also includes children who are living in non-household situations such as women refugees and hostels and hospital prisons. So this is in theory, but in practice, we didn't have any children in any of these categories. The sample also included children not born in the UK but who were established as residents in the UK at the age of 9 months. So it also includes those who are not British citizens. The population excludes children who died before age 9 months and any children who have left the country before the age of 9 months. So these were never surveyed. And the sample also excludes any children who were established as residents in the UK at the age of 9 months, but who are who were not established as residents, such as the children of foreign diplomats and asylum seekers. The MCS sample is complex, so it's stratified, it's clustered, and has oversampled minorities and disadvantaged groups. So the population was stratified by UK countries, so England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, and each country had 2 strata for advantaged and disadvantaged families in terms of their social class. England had an additional stratum for ethnic minorities, and the sampling unit was the electoral ward. So basically these families were selected from electoral wards. As I said, minorities and disadvantaged families were oversampled. The identified sample consisted of about 27,000 families. However, the issued sample in the first wave consisted of 24,000 families. And those who responded or participated in the first wave are 18,552 families. There are actually a number of families, 692 families, who were not part of MCS1 but joined the study in MCS2, so in wave 2. And these are basically the families whose addresses were not known in the first wave, and the survey agency was unable to contact them in time for the first survey. So MCS, as any longitudinal survey, does suffer from non-response. We need to distinguish between 2 types of non-response. We have unit non-response, and this is the case of respondents who have been selected to participate in the survey but do not take part, and thus we have completely missing records for them. The other case is for respondents who have participated in the study but did not answer all questions. So we have gaps in the information they have provided, and this is called item non-response. In terms of unit non-response, there could be different reasons why respondents would not participate in the study. It could be non-contact. This is the case where the survey agency knows the address of the respondents. However, they were unable to contact them because either these respondents live in a gated community and hard to reach, or they have long working hours, whichever reason. Another reason is refusal. So this is the case where respondents refuse to participate in the study, and we know that refusals are likely to increase over time. Another reason is inability in the case of respondents having health issues at the time of the survey, or they have disabilities which prevent them from participating in the study. So all these factors would lead to respondents dropping out from the survey. We know that non-response is increasing in MCS, and however, non-response is not always permanent. So in some cases, respondents would drop out, would participate in the survey, but then drop out and then participate again in subsequent ways. So the exact definition of attrition is a discontinued participation of some individuals in a longitudinal survey for reasons that are unknown or beyond the control of the researcher. So this is what happens to the MCS samples. You can see that the sample consisted of 18,552 families in wave 1, and then the number of families started decreasing until reaching 13,287 in wave 5. The largest decrease happened between wave 1 and wave 2. In this table, you have a detailed breakdown of the types of non-response, so non-responding families. You hear, for instance, refusals, respondents who have refused to participate in the study, and you can see that this number has slightly increased over time, although it has dropped between wave 3 and wave 4. Non-contacts also have started at a high level and then decreased slightly. And there is a group called not issued, and these are basically respondents who have dropped out in 2 consecutive waves, and in the third wave they are no longer contacted by the survey agency because we know that they are very unlikely to respond to the survey, and trying to contact them will constitute a cost for running the survey. So we don't contact them if they dropped out for 2 consecutive waves. So here you can see what happens. The 2 groups that are of non-respondents who are which are growing over time are the refusals and the not issued groups, while our other groups are more or less stable over time. Here you have a breakdown of different types of response according to, so basically we have monotone response. This is the group of respondents who have participated in a number of ways and then dropped out without ever coming back. Non-monotone response is the case of respondents who have participated in the survey, then dropped out, then joined again, and they represent about 20% of the entire sample, while those who have participated in all waves, they represent 54% of the MCS sample. So you can see that slightly less than half of the sample have missed at least one wave of data collection. So in this figure you can see what happens to the sample composition over time. So here you have the gender of the cohort member. In wave 1 you can see that we had 51% boys, and then this percentage started decreasing slightly until reaching 50.4%, while the proportion of girls is increasing. And this is due to 2 main factors. First, infant mortality is higher among boys, and parents of boys are less likely to respond to the survey. So you can see that the gender composition of the sample is changing over time. This is what happens to the sample in terms of social class and ethnic group. So you can see that the proportion of non-white respondents has decreased by a bit, almost 1%, from 16 to 15% over time, while the proportion of respondents who are exercising managerial jobs is increasing, which means that the sample is losing basically respondents from working class families or those who are exercising manual jobs. So in a way, the sample over time is likely to become biased due to attrition. So the 2 main problems that are caused by attrition. First, we have missing data. So over time, the sample would be smaller. We'll have few transitions and incomplete histories in a longitudinal context. And of course, we'll have lower statistical power for statistical analysis. And we might have bias in the results because of the bias in sample composition, because we are losing a particular type of respondents, such as families who are more mobile, tend to change homes, those who are disadvantaged, those who belong to the ethnic minority groups, respondents who are younger, men, those who have long working hours, and so on. And this would lead, of course, to problems with sample composition and possibly bias in the substantive analysis that relies on this data. So what can we do about it? We could ignore the problem, and of course this is not a valid solution to attrition, or we could use the adjustment techniques such as weighting and imputations. And this is of course what we recommend for data users. So in MCS we have constructed attrition weights. These are readily available and can be used by researchers. So we have two types of weights. We have the sampling weights. These adjust the sample composition to take account of the oversampling in the first wave. And we have the attrition weights, and these adjust the sample composition to take account of the loss of particular type of respondents over time. And by adjustment, I mean to give more weight to a particular group of respondents. So imagine if we are losing socially disadvantaged respondents, so we will give more weight to this group of individuals. The overall weights provided in MCS are equal to the product of the sampling weight multiplied by the attrition weight. The attrition weights are constructed using logistic regressions. So in these models, basically we have the dependent variable, which is a binary variable taking the value of 1 if the respondent participated in the survey and 0 otherwise. And the independent variables could include any characteristics of the respondents in all preceding weights. And the attrition weights would be equal to the inverse of the probability of participating in the survey. So here is a list of all the weights we have so far in MCS. So the weights are start with basically end with two numbers, 1 or 2. So 1 corresponds to the weights for country-specific analysis. So if you are interested in doing analysis only for England or Scotland taken apart, then you would use this weight. However, if you are interested in whole of the UK analysis, then you would use the weights that end up with 2. So weight 1, weight 2 are the sampling weights, and all other weights are attrition weights corresponding to each wave. These are named, so the first letter corresponds, so A for wave 1, B for wave 2, C for wave 3, and so on. And you'd have 2 weights in each wave. So these overall weights are basically equal to the multiplication of the sampling weight and the attrition weights. If you are doing regression analysis and your outcome variable is at wave 4, and say your independent variables are from the different waves, then you would use the weight corresponding to your outcome variable, so the weight for wave 4. So here I'm presenting how you could use the sampling and attrition weights and the different survey design features in Stata. So this only applies for the Stata users. You need to use the SVY command, and here how you could write it. So the first variable in blue is the electoral ward, so this is the primary sampling unit. The second variable is the weight, and this weight is for wave 3 for whole of the UK analysis, but actually you need to choose the correct weight depending on the analysis you are doing. Then you have to choose the stratum. So and this this variable actually includes the stratum ID. And finally, there is an adjustment factors that you need to include as well in the command. In terms of the documentation, you have all sorts of technical reports on sampling, response, and field work. You have a data dictionary. You have also the questionnaires, which you can research to look for variables. You have guides on the construction of variables and different scales, and you have a guide to the data set. All of these documentation can be found on the CLS website. I would like to say a couple of things about how to merge data sets in MCS. So as probably you know, the data set is available on the UKDS website, and it's stored cross-sectionally. So each wave has its own folder, and within each folder you'd have multiple files. So you might have one file for the parent questionnaire, one file for the child questionnaire, one file for containing the weights and the survey design features, Another file called the household grid, which basically has information on all members of the household. So it's very likely that you will have to merge some of these files. And merging data would depend on what you are trying to do and on your research questions. So for instance, if you are interested in doing analysis at the family level, so if you are interested in something like the number of bedrooms in the household, so this is not specific to the child or to the parent, it's specific to the household as a whole. So you need to merge data based on the family identifier, which is MCS ID. However, if you are interested in individual cohort members, then you should keep in mind that some families have more than one cohort member. Some have twins and some have triplets. So you might end up working with more than one child in each family. So you need to do the merging based on the family identifier and on the child identifier. Another issue to keep in mind is that main respondents do change over time. So on this table, this is an extract of data from MCS. So you can see that MCS ID is the family identifier, and this is MCS1, so wave 1 and wave 2. The first line is for the same family. However, you can see that the main respondent identifier is 1 in the first wave and 2 in the second. And there's a change in gender. And this most likely means that in the first wave, it was the main respondent was a woman, most likely the mother, and in the second wave, the main respondent was the father. So when working with the data, you should make sure that the data you are working with correspond to your person of interest. So if you are interested in the income of the mother, you should make sure that the income of the main respondent corresponds to, or the partner corresponds to the mother. Because the main respondents might change over time, the identity of the main respondent. Another thing that you should note is that the data structure has changed between wave 5 and the previous waves. So in all previous waves, the answers from the parent questionnaire, so from the main respondent questionnaire and the partner questionnaire, were stored separately in 2 different data files. However, in wave 5, the answers from the partner and the main respondent questionnaire were stored in the same file, and there is a flag variable indicating to whom the data corresponds, whether it's the main respondent or the partner. A couple of things about variable naming in MCS. So this is the conventional way of variable naming. So all variables would start with a letter. So the first letter indicates which wave they are taken from. So A for wave 1, B for wave 2, C for wave 3, and so on. Then the second letter, here it's M. So M is for main respondent, P is for partner. Then you would have 4 letters, and these correspond to the question name in the questionnaire. Then you would have a letter taking the values of 0, A, B, C. So 0 is for questions which are not related to cohort members, like number of rooms in the household, while A, B, C are for questions related to particular cohort members. So A is for the first child, B is for the twin, and C is for the triplet. And finally, you would have a number which could take the values of 0, A, B, C, D, etc. And these are for multi-code questions, because some questions can take more than one answer. And so the first answer will be coded as A, second answer as B, third answer as C, and so on. Of course, in MCS, in all waves, we have a number of derived variables. So these were constructed based on the responses from the questionnaires, and basically they were harmonized over the different waves. So we have variables on ethnicity, education, employment and occupation coding, on respondent identity, on household composition, on religion, income, housing, and so on. So you can download the data and check which derived variables we do have. So you don't actually have to construct your own variables if these do exist. Finding variables in MCS. There are different ways of looking for variables. You can download the questionnaire, and so it's in PDF. You can look through it. You can use the online dictionary, but it takes a little time because it's based online and there are thousands of variables. Or you can download the data and use it in statistical software like data and use commands like look for, which would allow you to search variables based on keywords. So this is how the data dictionary looks like, and you can access it on the CLS website. And here are some website resources, so the CLS website and some other tools that you might find helpful. Thank you, and please, if you have any questions, please go ahead and write it in on the left-hand side in the box. Okay. How are disadvantaged people measure? Is the measure still appropriate? So basically, it's based on administrative data. I think it's on the child benefits from the child benefits records, and so the sampling was done in wave 1. So it's no longer, it doesn't change over time. So people were selected based on their characteristics in this prior to the first wave of MCS. So for this question, I'm trying to conduct some research on cognitive test scores and whether you need to standardize. So you need to standardize the test scores so to have an average of 0 and standard deviation of 1. You don't need to use the weights at this stage because this is done at an individual level, right? However, when you do your statistical analysis and you take the entire sample in your analysis, then you need to adjust the sample composition using the weights. Okay, well, we don't have a specific weight for a combination of England and Wales. However, in this case, I would suggest that you would use the whole of the UK analysis because the sample for Northern Ireland is very small and the sample for Scotland is about 2,000 kids. So most likely, you only need to use the whole of the UK analysis or the England weights. Yeah, actually, whole of the UK weight would be fine because these would be available for England and Wales. Yeah, after matching the data across, say, 2 sweeps, do non-productive cases at both sweeps need to be excluded? Or should you keep everyone? Well, it depends actually on the analysis you are doing. So in case you are doing a regression and you are using variable from both waves, then these missing values so any observation with any missing values on any of the variables would be dropped out. So you will end up working with only complete cases. However, if you are merging the 2 sweeps but then doing, let's say, some descriptive statistics first, using one variable at a time, then you probably should include all the available cases. Why do you think men are less likely to engage with the survey as they grow up? Interesting question. So this is actually finding that we find across, it's not only in MCS, we find it in BCS 70 and other core studies which are much older than MCS. Possibly it's an engagement thing, so they don't engage in the same way with the study as their women counterparts. So we don't really know exactly why. Okay, so if you have merged multiple data sets, so all the weights, and so which weight should you use? It depends actually, as I said. So in case you are doing a regression and your outcome variable is on wave 4 and you are using independent variables from all previous waves, then you would use the weight in wave 4. So as a general rule, you select the weight that corresponds to your wave from which you took your outcome. However, if you are using all the weights in a single analysis, then you would use the most recent weight, so sweep 5, yes, as you said. So when will the data dictionary be updated with the variables in MCS 5? We don't really know. So. Not sure. So, which are the minorities considered? Are these only ethnic minorities? Is there any classification for? Yes, so basically when we say minority, we have a number of variables in MCS to describe minorities, and so it's either in 6 categories, in 8 categories, or in 11 categories. So it's fairly detailed. So marginalized communities, I'm not sure what that would stand for. So it could be a combination of social class, or so yeah, this more kind of exclusion thing. But okay, so my colleague is saying that the variables for MCS5 are already there on the website, so you could search for on the data dictionary. How many of the children that took part were living in Wales? Can you check? So in wave 1, it's 2,761, and the number dropped to 1,881 in wave 5. Is there a second edition to the Guide to Psychological, Developmental and Health Inventory? Yes, there is a plan for a second edition, so it will come soon. So if you have any more questions, please do write them in this box. Okay. Okay, so we don't have any more questions. Thank you. Thank you for attending this
I think we've got one more
webinar. And okay. How are info on ethnicity is self-reported, so people are asked to report on their ethnic group. So it's not so basically it's respondents who determine which ethnic group they belong to.
Through parent questionnaire.
It's through parent questionnaire.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, everyone. It would be much appreciated if you could give us some feedback on the webinar today. If you could, I've added the link to the chat pane. If you could answer a few questions for us, that would be great. I'll also be sending around the slides from the presentation and a recording of the webinar early next week, and I'll also be reminding people if it's okay to fill out the evaluation form. If you have got any final questions, we have got a few minutes, but okay. But I think that's the end. So thanks very much, and we'll be sending you more information soon.